This episode of UK Low Carb Podcast is sponsored by Deliciously Guilt Free. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to UK Low Carb. I'm your host Dan Grief, and today and for the next few weeks we're doing something pretty special. Graham Phillips and I have recorded some different episodes about topics we think you want to hear more about. Now, if you don't know who Graham Phillips is, he's best known for being the pharmacist who gave up drugs, and this is because he realised throughout the whole of his pharmacist career that the drug treatments he was giving were mostly plastering over the patient's ill health rather than curing them. He went back to the research and he discovered that lifestyle was often the root cause of most of their health issues. So every Tuesday, Graham and I will discuss topics such as calories, lipids, fat versus carbs, blue zones, aging, sleep, and a whole range of topics. Later in the series, we'll also hold a live event where you can ask any questions you have for Graham. So as you go along, take a note of anything that comes up, and then you get your chance to ask him live. Now, Graham is also a member of the UK Low Carb Facebook group, so feel free to join in the conversation there after today's episode, where he'll be very happy, I'm sure, to engage in a bit of conversation and Q&A. I hope you enjoy these, and any points, any thoughts you might have, go to UK Low Carb, where I'd love to carry on the conversation. I'm now going to hand over to the great man himself, Graham Phillips. Hey guys, welcome back. I can't believe, and I'm sure Graham would feel the same, the kind of emails and messages we're receiving. It's really incredible. Welcome, Graham, to UK Low Carb. What do you think about all the lovely feedback we've been receiving?
Hi, Dan. First of all, thanks for having me back. You must be sick to death of me by now, mate.
Never. Although this is going to have to stop soon. I'm seeing you more than my wife.
I know. It's turning into a bit of a bromance. Remind me, you're in the top 3% of podcasts now?
I think it's under 2% now. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And hats off to you.
Thank you.
I have to say, I was reading one of your Facebook pages the other day, and the thing is that when you do your podcast, you come across as a really nice bloke. You know, very
in reality,
very. As I've got to know you, I can reveal to your listeners that actually you are as nice as you seem. You are.
Oh, thank you.
And it's been seriously because we're building quite a strong partnership, and I'm at the stage in life now where I choose who I work with. And, you know, I want to work with who I want to work with, people who have a shared vision and a shared attitude, which is not the same as agreeing on everything and having an echo chamber. I'm all for constructive challenge, but, you know, it's been absolute pleasure working with you. And I just want to thank you once again for the opportunity.
Well, can I just say this, Graham, and this is what listeners won't know, but we actually talk about politics and religion outside of this as well, and we still get on. So, you know, I think you don't have to agree on everything. However, I do think it's important to have respect. And I think if there's anything to this experience, we've had a great deal of respect for our opinions and our positions, which is great. And that brings me on to today's topic, which is sleep, which when we first planned this series, this I don't think was firmed up as an idea of a topic, and yet every episode seems to link to it, and we decided it would just make a lot of sense to talk about sleep. And before we dive into the topic itself, I just wanted to say that this is probably the area that trips me up the most. And I imagine I'm not alone in that either. I think there's probably many of us who compromise on sleep, but that has a detrimental effect. And I thought it'd be good to get you to talk a bit about that today.
So I thought I'd start with a kind of an anecdote, right? So you go to your GP, GP does a few tests, says come back and see me in a couple of weeks, and says cholesterol's a bit high, take a tablet, right? Come back and see me in a couple of months. And you go back in a couple of months' time and GP says, cholesterol's under better control now, but your blood pressure's a bit high, take a tablet, come and see me in a couple of months. And you go back and he says, oh yeah, cholesterol's quite good now, blood pressure's lower, but you need to up the dose a bit. As you're walking out of the door, this is now the 6th time you've been, you say, you know what, doc, I'm not sleeping very well. And the doctor just shrugs. Because A, it's not important, and B, there's nothing they can do for you.
Interesting.
And that's, so many of my clients come to me with an objective which involves, I want to improve my well-being. I'm struggling with my weight, I'm struggling with my stress, I might be struggling with my mental health. I don't want diet. Sleep is just nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And talking about politics, I used to want to be like Margaret Thatcher. Not
Here we go. It's coming out now, isn't it?
Yeah, not before you lose it with me. Not in a political sense.
Okay, good.
Margaret Thatcher was known for not needing any sleep.
Oh, of course. Was it? Didn't you say like 4 hours a night or something?
She used to survive on 3 hours of sleep. Right?
3. Wow.
Remember who her busy mate was politically?
Ooh, Willie Whitelaw. I'm trying to think. Oh, Reagan in America.
And what was his big thing about sleep?
Ooh, I don't even know.
Same.
The same, right? Okay. So the neocons and neoliberals were like, work hard, don't play, and just don't sleep. Okay.
And what did Mrs. Thatcher die of?
She died of Alzheimer's, didn't she?
What did Ronald Reagan die of?
Oh, did he die of Alzheimer's as well? Wow.
And so I used to believe that sleep was just a waste of time. And I always used to believe there's plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. Don't waste your life on sleep. What I didn't realize is that you will be dead. And you'll be dead much sooner.
Mm.
And actually, sleep is so fundamental to our well-being that if you, whatever else you're trying to do, low carb, keto, exercise, whatever it might be, if you don't build it on a foundation of good sleep, you are literally building your house on sand.
I think you've got such a good point there, because this is what I've learned as well. I think when people understand that obesity, type 2 diabetes, all these things start from is it anhormonal or just ahormonal? I guess it's an H as a hormonal problem in the first place. And actually, sleep, of course, is the basis for getting most of your hormones balanced in the first place. And if you're chronically undersleeping, like I have been in the past, actually you've got cortisol levels really high all the time. Your hormones are all over the place. So no wonder it's going to have an impact on other parts of your life.
So every year there's an experiment. 1.5 billion human beings take part in this human experiment every year.
Right.
Twice a year. And as a result of this twice a year experiment, at the start of the experiment, because the experiment occurs twice a year, 6 months apart, and in the first half of the experiment, there's a 23%, I think a 25% increase in heart attacks, strokes, and car accidents every year. And 6 months later, there's another experiment every year, and it almost reverses itself.
Okay, so what's this cultural event that's happening, I wonder?
Moving the clocks forward and then
back. Of course. Yes. Interesting.
And it just illustrates that because we're chronically underslept, the fact that we lose an hour's sleep, just think about it. I think it's a 25% increase in suicides in the next day. And it takes 3 days for the ripple effect of more suicides, car traffic accidents, heart attacks. I think at day 4, it goes back to normal.
Oh my goodness.
6 months later, when we get that extra hour, it doesn't quite reverse itself, but it nearly does.
Wow.
We've even done studies on how harsh the judgments of judges is for the period immediately before and after the clocks go forward and back. And you see a significant upward step in sentencing severity and a reduction.
Oh my goodness.
That's 1 hour, twice a year for 20% of humanity or whatever it is.
Incredible. I didn't know.
Illustrate to yourself and our listeners just how important sleep is.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about that is that that's not more commonly discussed, because that's obviously massive. I love the fact, by the way, that we think ourselves as human beings as being so logical and so kind of above our bodies and outside of the material world sometimes in this intellectual space. And actually we are physical matter. So these things are detrimental to our logic, to our thinking, to our response, to our emotional response.
I'll give you a couple more for instances, which might be interesting. Whales, as you know, are mammals. So if a whale fell asleep at the bottom of the sea, it would drown because it needs to come up for air.
Hmm.
A whale doesn't sleep. What it does is it sleeps with one side of the brain and then the other.
Right.
And birds on the wing, you know, these migratory birds where they migrate
Like swallows and yeah,
several days, they're on the wing continuously.
yeah.
So they sleep with one side of their brain and then the other side alternately.
Wow. Amazing.
We're not clever enough to do that, unfortunately, as human beings. But, not only do we sleep as organisms when we sleep, not only do our individual cells sleep, but the organelles, you know, every cell has characteristic parts. You
Hmm.
probably have the mitochondria and so on and so forth. Even the parts of the cells individually sleep.
Oh, really? So that's actually a shutdown at that cellular level as well.
Subcellular level.
Oh, yeah, of course, it's within the cell. Yeah.
And there's a whole significant, we've talked about the microbiome. Even your microbiome, not only does it sleep and regenerate, but your microbiome substantially modulates during that sleeping time.
So what does that mean exactly to modulate?
Well, the microbiome, we've got 100 trillion bugs in our guts, and they're regenerating, I think, every 30 minutes.
Right. Oh, wow.
It's been shown that, for example, exercise changes your microbiome in a good way.
Right.
It's the same. So people forget with this incredible synergistic relationship we have of our bugs. Just to remind everyone, we've got 22,000 genes. A banana has got 30,000 genes.
Yeah.
A banana has more genes than a human being.
But I think we're a bit better than a banana.
And that's because of these bugs. So I'm just trying to illustrate in a number of ways that are interesting and I hope a bit shocking how important sleep is and why we need to take it much, much, much more sleep seriously than we do.
See, I think there's several things that mean that doesn't happen. Firstly, I had until recently the same idea that you had, that life is short. So why waste time on sleep? Cut it down. I mean, I did know that fact about Thatcher, and I kind of thought that for a long time that was kind of the way to be because you get more achieved and more done. And actually, life is just too fun and there's too much happening to sleep. But I kind of realized that it was having a detrimental effect on my health and my migraines and all the rest of it. And the migraines are the thing that's made me take this very seriously to realize I can't write off a day with a migraine anymore. It's actually much worse to miss that hour or two for sleep than it is to then like miss off a whole day. So that is my first thing. But I think also mobile phones, the blue light that people are seeing, the screens continually, are probably, and also maybe even chemical stimulations of things we're eating and drinking are also affecting the quality of the sleep, aren't they? So you might go to bed, but if you look at the phone just before you go to bed, I don't imagine your brain turns off in the same way than if you just read a book.
You're absolutely right. So,
Right.
we've been trying to do each of these slightly differently. So I'm not going to go through a PowerPoint today, but what I'd like to do is take you to one of my blogs. It's one of my favorite blogs on sleep, and it kind of encapsulates a lot of what we've been talking through.
Okay.
And I'm not going to read the whole thing to your listeners because we can put the link in the show notes.
No problem at all. Yeah, we'll do that.
At the end of this blog, I discuss some principles of sleep. And what I thought is rather than me pontificating, I thought I'd actually start discussing sleep with you as I would with a client and come to where we end up.
Yep, love that idea. Let's go for it. So those who are going to be watching this on YouTube, we're going to put that now. If you share your screen, you can see the blog itself. And like Graham just said, anyone who's listening, just check out the show notes below and we should have that link there. So this is on the prolongevity.co.uk website /blog/sleep. You can check it out there for yourselves, but we'll put the show notes there as well. Over to you, Graham.
So, Dan, just talk to me about your understanding of sleep and what your sleep looks like. You've got a very big, busy business. You've got a wife in the middle of a PhD, 2 young children. So I assume that you struggle to fit it in like everybody else.
Well, this year I was asked to stand in the local elections and I just said no because I realized the only way that was going to happen is if I worked 24 hours a day and didn't have any sleep. And I just realized that's going to not happen. So it's better than it was. I average between 6 hours a night most nights, but I try to increase that now to 7.5. I'm trying to aim for 8. I need to get myself into a routine of that.
And have you got a sense of being an arc or an owl? An owl?
Oh, for sure, an owl. So this is interesting. I feel like I'm just having a consultation now. This is really good because I want to talk about this. I get really lethargic between 7 and 8, like even a bit earlier, 6:30 to 8 o'clock in the evening. Really, really tired. Like yesterday, I didn't eat anything all day long. So I was fasting all day long and I was tired by that time. Previously, I've had lunch and I've still been tired at that time. And I generally get hungry at that time as well. I get hungry about 7 or 8. And if I'm OMAD like I was yesterday, then that's when I eat and I'm absolutely fine then. But then after 8 o'clock, I'm wide awake until midnight, easily, sometimes till 2 in the morning. Yeah. So I'm definitely an owl.
If you go to my website, we'll link to that too. There's actually a resource, and there's about 60 questions, and you answer all these questions. Oh, it's not as many as 60, but it gives you a score. So this is what evolutionary biology shows us, which is when you're asleep, some very fundamental things can't happen. You can't defend yourself, you can't feed yourself, and you can't reproduce. Mm-hmm. Now, in evolutionary terms, those are all absolutely disastrous, right?
Yeah. The race won't carry on.
Right. Evolution being what it is, if evolution could have got us to reduce the need to sleep to an absolute minimum, that would give us a huge evolutionary advantage, right?
Oh, so the productivity of carrying on the human race and being healthy, and I see what you mean, yeah.
But it hasn't.
Right.
You've probably heard me talk previously about this thing called hormesis, which is a form of positive stress. What doesn't kill you stronger. And the examples I give are high intensity exercise, fasting, and hot and cold. Mm-hmm. Through the one adaptation that man has never had is a lack of sleep, because we've always slept, right? And 3 things affect your sleep: temperature, mm-hmm. food, and light.
Right.
And it's a bit like travel sickness. In travel sickness, where you've got different parts of the brain getting conflicting signals and you get all out of whack. Mm-hmm. Those things are aligned, everything else is messed up.
Because I've heard somebody who had a real problem with their circadian rhythm from flying to America frequently. Yeah. And then he was told by his doctor he had to eat at very precise times to get his cycle back, and then exercise at very certain times as well, so he could sleep properly.
And that's a good point, because what a lot of us do is we've got sleep patterns at the weekend that are maybe 2 or 3 hours different sleep patterns during the week.
Well, that's where having young kids helps, because their sleep pattern's always the same. So I'm always getting up early on a Saturday, Sunday, which means I have to get to bed a bit earlier on a Saturday, Sunday, which does help no end, actually.
Yeah. What a lot of people do is they're almost sleep. If you think of those 2 or 3 hours of time slip between the weekend and the weekday, that's like traveling across 2 or 3 time zones.
Yeah, good point.
So the sleep scientists call it social jet lag.
Oh, right. Excellent. I like that.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's great.
So on my website, as I say, there's a very good little questionnaire that anyone can download for free and get a sense of what their chronotype is. And the chronotype is whether you're an owl or a lark or somewhere in between. And the evidence is that mankind, Homo sapiens, slept in tribes.
Right.
For safety.
Yeah.
So the whole tribe was asleep at the same time. No one could feed, no one could reproduce, and no one could defend themselves. The whole tribe would have been completely vulnerable.
So we have different shifts, and some of us would be more like, What are you, by the way, Graham? Are you a night owl or are you a lark?
I am slightly in between. So I'm night, but not as much as I thought I was. I've always assumed that I was very much an owl, but I'm only mildly an owl.
Okay.
So they actually believe there are 5 different chronotypes. So owl and lark are at the extremes, but there's actually like that. So there's 5 different options.
Right. Which makes sense, because then you're covering everything then, aren't you?
You're covering everything, so that you can imagine how people would take it in turns in relays to sleep or not sleep.
Yeah.
The point is this: if you are an owl or a lark, you can't become the other one.
So you can't. This is interesting because I've tried to sometimes force myself into being a lark because there are, let's just say, there are certain stoic influencers on the internet who will say you should be up at 4:30 in the morning, doing your work between then and 6, and I'm like, that would just destroy me. Whereas I'm really productive between 10 o'clock at night and 2 in the morning sometimes. I'm not saying that's good, but that's just when my brain works really well.
And your wife, is she a similar chronotype to you or different?
She is completely the same. She's a late person, and then the two kids ruin it by getting up early.
Your relationship has hope.
Great. Based on that, then good.
But it's true. So where you've got an owl married to a lark, there's a real problem.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people do is they kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to get my 6 hours because I think 6 hours is enough. 6 hours is already 25% underslept.
Mm-hmm.
And they then say, well, as long as I get my 6 hours, I can move that round the cockface. It's still 6 hours, right?
Oh, but boy, is that different, isn't it?
So again, this is all new stuff. When I was doing my training, I thought of sleep as a fairly passive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out sleep is an incredibly active thing. And if you look at your basal metabolic rate, which is the amount of energy you consume just lying in bed doing nothing, you might assume that will drop radically while you're asleep. It drops a bit, but not much. And it turns out that during the sleep, the brain does all sorts of things that you wouldn't imagine.
Okay.
One of which is it's a bit like a computer and clearing the RAM and clearing the ROM and defragging the hard disk.
Oh, okay. So it's cleaning up everything, yeah?
Cleaning everything up. So what it does overnight is it assembles, it goes through the last 24 hours. It works out what's important and what's not. It throws away the rubbish. It then files the rest of it in a logical order and stores it in a retrieval system.
Right. So it's like your memory works.
Just exactly that. And so, you know that old thing, I'm going to sleep on it?
Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever done that? You say, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to sleep on it. And in the morning, it's crystal.
Yeah, I have done that. And it works, doesn't it?
And the reason is that the RAM and the ROM have been cleared. You've got rid of the rubbish. The brain has assembled everything in a logical order and dealt with it. So
that's amazing.
Problem isn't an old wives' tale. It's actually got a huge basis to it.
I've also noticed when I was younger and I used to stay awake all night, I gave myself challenges. So one year I went with my dad to the summer solstice at Stonehenge to go and see what it was like. And then we were stayed up the next day because I thought there's no point going to sleep. And then that night I thought, well, I'm going out with some friends. I was about 17 at the time. I'm going out with some friends so I can do another night. So I did 2 nights without sleep and then slept the next day. That was the longest I've gone for. And I remember by the 3rd day, 2 nights of no sleep, I had no idea when things happened because my sense of time was all warped. Whereas when you've got a day with a beginning and an end and sleep in the middle, your brain seems to process that was on Wednesday. But when you're going for 3 days straight, I was like, was it this morning, yesterday afternoon, yesterday night? I had no idea. I was getting so confused just by time management was out.
So if you want to kill a human being, the quickest way to kill them, obviously, if you're not going to sort of stab them to death or blow them up, is to deprive.
That's another podcast, Graham.
Is deprive them of water, and they'll be dead in more or less a week.
Yeah.
How long? So long as you have plenty of water, how long do you reckon you can survive without food?
Oh, food, 30 days.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
Right. And for many of us, probably a lot more because we've got all those stored calories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Total sleep deprivation will kill you within 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
So you can see that your 2 or 3 days you were on the path.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And actually that becomes chronic. So you might not do it for 2 to 3 weeks with no sleep, but if you're not sleeping for years and years and years properly each night, then I guess the chronic effects are going to be similar.
And sleep, it turns out, is incredibly structured. So you kind of think about it as being unconscious. And what's really interesting, and we'll link to this one as well, there's a wonderful YouTube of a sleeping dog. And there's a nucleus in the brain. So when you're asleep and you go into that kind of dream state, right, it's a form of psychosis.
Right.
Right? If you just imagine a sort of psychotic episode, actually, we all have psychotic episodes called dreams every night, but they don't act out. And when you're in that deep sleep, that dream sleep, the body, the muscles are sort of paralyzed.
Right.
You know that the people who sleepwalk
Hmm.
and they are fully asleep, it's because that nucleus in the brain hasn't switched off their movement.
Wow. So actually acting out their dreams as if
Yeah.
they're there because
Yeah.
that's not switched off. Wow.
In fact, I think we might do this. So I'm going to send you the link. So there's this wonderful video of this dog, and it's sleeping, and you can see it sleeping, and you can see the dog start to dream, and it starts to gallop in its sleep, and it wakes up and it slams into the wall.
Oh, poor thing.
So it's sleep running, and you can see it going, "Oh, what the hell happened there?" And what I'd like to do, I'm going to send you the link, and maybe we'll just just for the viewers in particular, we'll interlink that video into our conversation of the sleeping dog, and it's the most amazing thing. And you can see this the dog is peacefully asleep, and then you can see it start to dream, and then you can see it start to run. It's either running to catch something or running away, and then it wakes up. Well, it doesn't wake up; it gets up in its sleep and slams into the wall. It's the most amazing, and it's because that nucleus in the brain that's supposed to switch off the muscle movements when you go into your psychotic dream state didn't work.
Yeah. So he just thought his brain thought it was real. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go through a kind of a set piece with my prolongevity clients. So I thought perhaps we'd do that
Yeah. Let's do it.
and to see we get some general principles and see how this works for you. So these are evidence-based tips. They're not just something I've made on the back of a fag packet. So we talked about a regular sleep schedule, and we've talked about being an arc or an owl. So in your case, Dan, if everything else is stripped away, right, you've got no responsibilities and you can get up any time, what time would you get up?
Oh, I'd say about 10 in the morning if I could do what I wanted.
As late as that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not as late as that. I'm just trying to sound like it's not as late as it could be. To sound a bit better.
If you go back to times in your life when you've had no responsibilities, let's say, for example, you're on holiday or in your student days.
Actually, yeah, 10 to 11, something like that.
As late as that. So
Yeah, it can be, yeah.
Sounds like you are properly an owl.
Oh, I could stay up till 4 in the morning, then go to bed easily. And I used to when I was a teenager. Oh, yeah, all the time. I used to stay until sunrise. And then as soon as the sun started to come up, I think, oh, I better go to bed quickly.
Teenagers are not a good example because they have their own unique sleep patterns.
Right.
Adult sleep patterns are quite different. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, so your natural wake up time is 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you need 8 hours sleep because there are these things called sleep cycles. And each sleep cycle lasts 90 minutes. And your REM and non-REM sleep, so the sleep structure changes through the different sleep cycles as the night goes on. Just as you can imagine what the computer's doing, which is it starts off by getting rid of the rubbish, right? Then it starts filing everything and then it makes sense of it. So your sleep pattern varies through the night. And that's one of the reasons why if you're a lark or an owl and you just try and move yourself around on the clock face, right, you're still getting your 8 hours. Where's the problem? Is because that sleep cycle then gets completely messed up. And so everything's happening in the wrong order at the wrong point.
Right.
Right. So if we say that your wake up time should naturally be 10 o'clock, and if we say that you want 8 hours sleep.
Well, it's really weird you say that because 2 is my natural want to go to bed time. That sounds crazy saying out loud, but if I was left to my own devices, I mean, okay, I've got a book here that I write all my notes in. Yeah. So, for instance, last night I went to bed at midnight. I didn't go to bed that late, but I just write in my book what I need to do, my plans for the next day, ideas I'm having, whatever. And I avoid the laptop because I try to avoid the screens now. But if I could be left to my devices till 2 a.m., I'd be very happy with that and wake up at 10 every day. That would be my natural. That'd just be me in a nutshell.
So far away from what we're allowed to do in modern life.
Oh, completely. And especially when you're running a business which works in very particular hours in the day with a postal pickup at a certain time and staff, and you have to be around. So and with young kids as well, that means that I'd rather go to bed at 2 and then I'm woken up at like 6:30, 7, and it's another day and here I am and oh my word, so I have to go to bed a bit earlier.
And in order to get your 8 hours sleep, generally you need about an 8.5 hour sleep opportunity to get 8 hours of sleep. So in
Right.
a real world, you'd be asleep at 1:30,
Yeah.
or lights out, whatever. You'd be asleep by 2 and you'd wake up at 10.
Yeah. Got you.
Never going to happen, right? Not in the
No.
world. Maybe when you get to be an old man like me and retire, but not going to happen.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Regular sleep pattern. So what I try and do with clients is establish their natural wake up time and work backwards, right? So if your natural wake up time, I mean, I'm not as extreme as you. My natural wake up time, if I'm just to let myself do what I want to do, I like to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
That's my natural wake up time, which means that as long as I'm asleep before midnight, I'm in a good space. So I try to be in bed by 11, asleep by 11:30, and then that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to pride myself on, I used to get 4 hours sleep most nights. And the weekend I'd get 6 hours and I'd feel absolutely fine. I thought I'd just getting away with it. I mean, clearly not. So a regular wake up time. So you've got to anchor sleep somewhere, right? And actually the way to anchor sleep is not the time you go to bed, it's the time you naturally wake up, and then reverse by 8.5 hours.
Right. Okay. So work backwards from that natural wake up time. I mean, in a way, because of school drop offs and whatnot, I don't really have the freedom to decide that. So I just need to work backwards from there then, really, I suppose, and make that happen. Yeah.
I mean, I realise it's all really well easy for me to say, but one of my clients is a very dynamic professional lady. And what she used to do was she'd look after the family, get the kids to bed, everyone was asleep at 10, then she'd do her work.
Yeah.
And she's now kind of my age, never reversed any of that. That's become habit.
Yeah.
Pre-diabetic. And we established that she was having, I don't know, 5 or 6 poor hours sleep, and never really thought about it because she'd done it like from being in her sort of 20s, 30s as a mother, and never thought anymore. It became established. And we worked
Yeah.
sleep.
So the problem is with that, and this is what I found when I was running this business from home up until just over a year ago, I used to be working till 2, 3 in the morning baking, then going to sleep, getting up at 6:30, 7. So I was down to very, very minimal sleep. And when I didn't appreciate until after that time how I felt awful all the time. You get used to it. And actually, I think that chronic unwell feeling becomes so normal, you don't even question it. And so recently I had very poor sleep again for a very particular reason. And I was like, oh, I'm right back to where I was when about a year or 2 ago. I don't want to go back there ever again. It was horrible, but you get used to it, unfortunately.
So used to being chronically sleep deprived, it just becomes life as normal, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So we've worked out, so we're anchoring our sleep. And then the next thing is to try and get some natural sunlight in the first half of the day, ideally for about half an hour, to set up the body's natural rhythm. Remember, I said sleep is anchored in 3 things that you want to bring together: temperature, food, and light.
Yep, got you.
Now, what a lot of my clients do is they say, I do feel a bit, my sleep's not great. But what I do is I'm okay because I sort of fall asleep on the sofa for half an hour. And then I go to bed, I can't bloody sleep.
Not surprising.
Not surprising. For 2 reasons. First of all, a 30-minute nap is a third of a sleep cycle.
Oh, wow.
It's not like you're saying, well, I'm going to get my 5 sleep cycles, but I'm going to have a complete one here and 4 more.
Yeah.
You've got a snippet of a sleep cycle, and then you woke abrupt awakening in the middle of a sleep cycle.
Yeah.
But the point is this, that by that little cat nap, you take away the sleep pressure. So there's a sleep chemical which builds up sleep pressure during the day, which helps you fall asleep. And if you cat nap during the day, you lose that.
Right.
What do people do is they sleep badly, and then they have a little cat nap, and then they sleep badly, and it's a self-propagating cycle.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I used to do. I used to have a nap about 7 or 8, which is now when I feel tired, but I don't let myself because I want to go to sleep properly later.
And how many people have that sleep at the wheel?
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
How many car accidents are actually anchored in a micro sleep, dream to be
Yeah.
chronically underslept.
Yeah.
Particularly people who have sleep apnea. It's
Mm.
notorious. And every so often you have these horrendous things where you get some lorry driver falls asleep at the wheel only for a micro sleep, and they're in a big truck.
And it's just disaster.
They take out 20 or 30 people on both sides of a motorway.
Jeez.
Yeah, not good. So try not to have those cat naps. Try and anchor your sleep in a consolidated period, because that's what we're designed to do. The next thing is about your routine. So I've talked about the routine of waking up. There should be a routine of going to sleep as well. So what's your pre-bed? If I say the 2 or 3 hours before bed, what's your typical routine, Dan?
Oh, it's not great. So at the moment, it's watching Handmaid's Tale with my wife because she loves it. It's horrific. If you've ever seen that, you know what I mean. And then it's a case of brush my teeth. Generally, I have a shower in the evening. I find that relaxes me a little bit. Brush my teeth, and then just fall into bed. I've always been somebody, by the way, who falls asleep with, like the journey from the floor to the bed. I'm almost asleep by the time I hit the pillow. So I am pretty instantly asleep.
And then once you're asleep, do you sleep all the way through or fitfully?
Yeah, pretty much all the way through. And then I'm a pretty good sleeper, actually, when I am asleep. It's more about trying to make sure I'm going to sleep at the right time.
So there are kind of three aspects to it, right? Is how long does it take you to fall asleep? How consistently do you sleep through the whole period?
Mm-hmm.
How long are you sleeping for? And it's bringing those together.
Right.
And what a lot of people do is they sleep fitfully.
Yes. Yeah. And I suppose they think they're in bed 8 hours, but really they might have been up several times with very disturbed sleep in that time.
I mean, most people, and this is my problem. I get up once in the night to go to the loo, and the problem is that sometimes I'm then fully awake, and I just think, oh, I'll just have a look at a couple of tweets and a bit of Facebook,
Yeah.
and so it goes on.
I think that's the problem. Mobile phones in particular. I mean, unlike a laptop, you wouldn't necessarily take a laptop to bed, although some people probably do. But a phone is so easy because it's your alarm clock quite often. Although you should probably just use a normal alarm clock. But people use their phones now, don't they?
The healthiest way is not, I mean, I know it's not feasible for most people, is not to have an alarm clock at all and not to even have a clock face in the bedroom.
Yeah.
People have real, if you go to a sleep clinic and you're really in trouble, what's what they'll do? They'll deprive you of daytime sleep. So you're forced to sleep as a consolidated nighttime period. And if you only get 5 hours, they'll say, right, that's it, 5 hours up and up it. You then go through the next day without a nap and gradually rebuild it, and you try and anchor it back in the right time. And there's no clock face. So you're not sitting there, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock. You're not aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is how humans have been for millions of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That anxiety of the clock face just makes things 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And it makes people think their bad sleep is even worse than it is, and then they get more anxious and so on and so forth. So, do you have a bath rather than a shower?
No, we just have a shower. Well, we do have a bath, but I never use it. However, last night I was actually at the spa at my gym after a workout, and that is pretty magical. Sitting in a hot tub outside, looking at the full moon with the clouds around, it was just incredible last night. So that was pretty special.
So I went for years. I'd have a morning shower,
Mm-hmm.
and now I have a nighttime bath.
Yeah.
And the reason is this, that as part of going to sleep, your central core body temperature has to go down by about 1.5 degrees centigrade. It's quite significant. And one of the best ways to achieve that is to dilate all the peripheral blood vessels.
Okay. So then they let the heat out when you come out of the bath.
Exactly. So you have a really hot bath, and I'm talking about a bath that is so hot to get into it actually hurts.
Yeah, I love those. I was in the sauna last night. I love all that.
Yeah. First of all, that's a form of hormesis, which we discussed earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, by dilating all the peripheral blood vessels, you get out of your very hot bath into your cold bedroom. So I'm talking about a bedroom that's as dark can be and cold.
Mm-hmm.
You can then very rapidly lose that central body temperature because your peripheral blood vessels are all you're radiating the heat out.
Right.
Right. A, it'll help you sleep quicker, but B, it will help you sleep better.
Wonderful. I'll try that then.
Cold bed.
Love it.
So
Love a cold bed.
I persuade you to swap your shower to a really hot bath, and let me know how you get on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely do that then. Nice one.
And then that's the next one. So a lot of people, and for me for years, you have your shower in the morning, so you go to bed, you put your electric blanket on, that warm, cozy feeling. Stop that, because that is going to be a great way to prevent you losing the extra body temperature that you need.
Right. Okay.
I mean, Karen puts hers on occasionally. We've got dual control.
One cold and one hot.
Yeah. And I never put my electric blanket on anymore.
Yeah.
And I get into bed.
To be fair, I like a cold bed anyway. I like it to be really icy cold, and I only sleep under a sheet even in winter. So Vesma has covers and everything. I just have a very simple sheet that I bought in India 10, 12 years ago, and I always use that to sleep under, and I have for like a decade or more, and it's really comfortable because my temperature is really low, and I'm very happy in that.
So hot bath we've talked about. I'll explain the reasons behind that. Keep the bedroom as cool as you comfortably can. Again, window, allow some air in, and not the central heating on all night and all of that stuff. And then that period before bed, keep lighting low, avoid screens, put your blue light filters on. And there's increasingly people are using, I know Aranda does this, blue light glasses.
Yeah.
If you look at Aranda's videos, he's always got the blue light.
He's wearing them now, isn't he, in the evenings? Yeah, he is, yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. And you can even buy, so as people are increasingly having these intelligent homes with these lights that you can control with Google or whatever, there's a whole series of blue hue lighting that you can do. Not some people are prepared to go that far, but other people, I would just say, just reduce your screen time and just turn down the lighting so it's nice and dark, in the evening.
Yeah, sounds good. I noticed one thing on there which is really interesting about this anxiety if you can't sleep. Now that, as you said about the clock face, that does affect many of us.
Yeah.
And actually that's why sometimes it's best just to not give up on sleep, but not try to sleep, but rather just read a book or something, or just do something not too stimulating, but it's going to tire your eyes a little bit rather than lying in bed waiting. Because I think the worst thing is when you've got to get up for an interview in the morning or a new job or something like that. And the anxiety is, I've got to sleep. And you just can't sleep. And the more you think about it, the more anxious you get.
Exactly. So give it a reasonable time. And if that doesn't work, then find something else to do in another room and then go back to bed when you feel sleepy and the sleep pressure has re-emerged. The trouble is the brain gets very programmed. So if the brain thinks that the bedroom is a place to watch TV, play video games and send emails and texts, then you disassociate that learned behavior becomes what you do in bed.
Yeah.
My bed is for two things, sex and sleep.
Fair enough. And you've got electric blankets, so there you go. Okay.
Yeah. The other one is exercise. So I've got some clients who will exercise late on in the day and then eat late. So you want to try and not be exercising within 3 hours of your sleep and not eating within 3 hours. I mean, there are all sorts of other reasons that you wouldn't want to eat within 3 hours of sleeping, but we're concentrating on sleep today.
Okay. So those people listening, I'd like to know how big a problem this is for people. So if you're listening to this right now, you might take on some of those tips that might help you. I hope they have. But it'd be really good if you're in the Facebook group UK Low Carb to share your experiences of sleep there, because I honestly think, well, it's the area, like Graham said, that gets the least attention probably by the medical profession. Yeah. It's also probably the area that gets the least attention by most of us in our modern society. But I think it is probably the most crucial thing to get the foundation of right, so that everything goes from there.
One final point here: the World Health Organization has classified shift work as a carcinogen.
Oh my word! Wow.
So I'm sure Basma will be interested in that.
Yeah. So
that's how profound lack of sleep is. It massively increases your cancer risk.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's incredible. Are we talking about the night shift in particular, or just shifts during the day?
The trouble with, Karen's son, for example, he's a junior doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And the other problem about shift work is it shifts around.
Yeah,
So
of course, it's a change. It's a hard thing.
it's not like they've got permanent social jet lag. It's changing all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna, I mean, we're not going to eliminate shift work, are we? Because it's just endemic within society.
Mhm.
But it'd be much better if people are working nights, consistently working nights.
Yeah.
But what they do 2 nights, 2 days, 2 nights, 2 days, 3 days off. So their body, they never anchor their body in any kind of a sleep cycle. That's even worse.
Yeah, my mum's had that her whole career as a midwife, and so she'd do a night shift followed by a day's sleep, followed by an early, followed by a late. It's just all over the. And I was like, "This is the most inhumane timetable ever." And she said, "Well, we're all doing it."
The idea is that you don't do so many nights, so you get some nights and some days, and they're trying to give you a balance. But actually, the evidence is that just makes it much more unhealthy.
Yeah, I can believe that. Well, thank you so much for that, Graham. It's something I'm going to take very seriously. So my 8.5 hours a night, to make sure that I've got a half-hour leeway, I'm going to take up. In fact, I slept 8 hours 2 nights ago, and I felt amazing the next day. Absolutely incredible. And I'm going to get into the routine of doing that. The only problem I have is I then tend to find the next night I'm so wide awake because my brain has had so much sleep that suddenly it's like, we've got all this extra energy. Come on, let's use it for creativity and other stuff. So I'm going to take that seriously. I might even just do a challenge this week and make sure I get that every single night. And I think, just like Asima Hotra said, 21 days to get into a habit. So maybe I'll give it 21 days and then see if that takes off from there on in. Well, thank you so much for that, Graham. And next we've got age next week. So we're going to go and record that shortly. But if you have any questions, we are getting prepared and we'll announce this next week, actually, the details of our live event. So between now and next week, just think about any questions you might have for Graham, and many more details of that will come out soon. Have a great week, Graham. Thank you for coming on the show today.
You too, and sleep well.
Nice.